Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the UpSet podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in with us this evening. As I always say, I'm never alone. I always have the crew with me. We're going to invite them on at this time. Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello, family.
Everybody.
Yes.
We live.
We're live. Yes, we have to.
We're hot tonight.
We are live tonight. Everything's happening in real time. As you can see, we have our special guest back with us, Emmanuel Asiedu.
Yep, that's perfect. Yes.
There's poetry in that name. I love that.
Yes.
You got it correct.
Yeah, we're really excited.
May I ask if does the name have a particular meaning, Emmanuel?
Yeah, in Ghana, the way they name people, your name will be able to tell where exactly you're from in Ghana.
Okay.
The tribe that you're from and the region that you're from. So that is how my name is.
Oh, okay. Now I see why so many people call me Nick Gutter.
Yeah, where I come from, it's you're from 22nd in Ontario.
Yeah.
Guys, can we just start the show?
Yeah. That's what we do, right?
It's called an icebreaker, Pat. Come on, it's an icebreaker.
You know how we could be, Chuck. By the time it's going,
we're
He's so
humans
excited.
too.
He's just excited about everything, and we're happy you're excited. And we want to remind everyone we're live so that we can entertain some of the questions that you may have about tithing. Last week, we kind of broached the subject, and Emmanuel did a great job of kind of educating all of us on some things, but there were a few things we didn't quite get to. We were a little like, we got to do part 2. And so we want to tackle some of those things as well as entertain any questions from all of you. So we also have the call-in number. I'm going to put it up there so you can see it. If there's some questions you want to call in and ask, there's the number. You can do that. But let's turn it over to our lead for tonight. Once again, Pastor Patrick Graham.
Pastor
Take it away.
Yep, this is how it begins. Bring ye all the tithe into the storehouse, and there may be meat in my house.
Exactly.
What's up, Nick? You want to finish that one? You want to finish that one for me?
That I might be able.
Hoop it, brother. Hoop it.
Now, listen. We had a great time last week, and honestly, and then we, of course, when we were in the green room afterwards, we've learned a lot. That Emmanuel had to bring with us, but we just started getting more phone calls, more people have said, hey, we just give us a little bit more, and we wanted a little bit more. We've talked a lot about we talked about tithing as worship, but we kind of like touched it real quick, jumped back off the blessings of tithing. We know about that, but we hear all the stories during the offering tithing period. But I think that we just wanted to get a little bit. We want to get a little bit on the ground as far as this is concerned, because people just want to know a little bit more, especially what's going on with tithe dollars, what tithe dollars are used for. I know we did a lot of surface as far as it's concerned, and I do want us to be able to leave here knowing about the blessings of tithing when we come down to the end. Is that all right, Nick? We could talk about the blessings of tithing. When we
I think it's good to talk about the blessings of tithing.
Yeah, that's good. That we could talk about that. Emmanuel, the last time you were on, you kind of looked like someone that was at the union. You had your tie on, jacket on. You look a little bit relaxed right now. You think you're used to us by now?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what we understand is that you came. Some people have lucky charms. We don't believe in all that lucky charms. We know about being blessed, but you have on your Ghanaian shirt.
Yes,
today.
that's my Ghanaian shirt. Yeah. Yes.
So I think he's about ready. He's ready for that. He's ready for us.
Yes.
And sometimes when you finish a show or you finish even preaching, sometimes you always go back and you say to yourself, "Man, what did I miss? What should I have put in there to sweeten the pot?" Did that happen to you, Emmanuel, at any time? As soon as it was over, you're like, I wish I had said this, or I wish I had said the other. What's the first thing that comes to your mind that you wish you had said?
I think I wish we had more time to talk more about it that day. But I think there's nothing in particular that I think I should have said. I think all that I said was what I intended to say. And I think we have more to say today as well.
That's good. You know, you really know how to walk the line. No, we're not going to attack you. We're good. We're good. I don't think anybody else will. But right before we dive in, I do want to make sure that everybody sees the phone number that's on the bottom that you can call in 301-969-8375. But also for our listeners, share this with someone. Someone may not be on here live as we're on live, but they could watch it. And also at the end, we have a way that you can get in contact just in case you want to learn a little bit more about tithing or offering and the way that it goes up the ladder and comes right back down. Anybody want to throw something in that we had last week that could benefit us this week? Anyone? Come on. Anyone?
I mean, normally I'm so shy, but I guess I'll speak out. I think one of the things that we're careful to parse is the difference between the spiritual purpose of the practice of tithing as compared to the policies that govern how tithing will be utilized once we have fulfilled the spiritual purpose. I think those are two very, very different things.
Correct.
And I'm hoping we might be able to explore that just a little bit more today.
Nick, you want to unpack that just a little bit for us? Just a little bit.
Yeah. As an existential practice, the idea of recognizing one's stewardship to God by returning 10% of that which God increases you with is a matter of faith, and it grows the soul and the spirit. That is something that happens in the relationship that exists between an individual and God. After a person has fulfilled that responsibility, has been accountable as a steward to God, then comes the institutional oversight or overstructure as to how what you have done spiritually will now be utilized practically. That is called policy. I mean, if we were to take an epistemological approach to tithing and looking at what tithing is, we would first start with the spiritual exercise. But then after that, we'd have to say, okay, now practically, once people have done their spiritual obligations and duties, how are we going to practically utilize these very real, mundane funds that have been gathered into what some people would call the storehouse?
Good. I'm glad you said that. Let me throw this out really quick, and not just to Nick, but to all of us. I'm going to put my parents out there real quick, and I'm sure that they're probably watching or will watch, but my parents don't even care about that other side that you were talking about, Nick. They're the types that say whatever I put in the offering plate or whatever I put in tithe, I don't care what happens. That's for God. And the reason why I brought that up, it's not to say that they're any better spiritual than anyone else.
Right.
What about me? That's asking the question. Sometimes we ask questions, and because we ask questions, people look at us as we're the demonic force, or we're, for just simply asking questions. And this is the reason what I want to turn really quick here, everybody, is to move it from where Nick was talking about spiritually, because Nick, please bring us back to the end when don't let me forget to bring it back spiritual. Okay. But what I want to put on the table now is quote unquote top heavy. Quote unquote top heavy. Since you brought it up, Nick, can we just stay there for a second?
Sure.
Top heavy. So Emmanuel, we're kind of throwing it back at you. You are the professional. You are the professional in this, and many people want to move into your direction when it comes to top heavy. First of all, anybody want to explain what I mean by top heavy before we continue with that? GP, you want to help me with that? What I mean by top heavy?
I just want to tell Emmanuel it's a setup. It's a setup. So, have at it.
So all this money goes up. I want to reiterate that. Go ahead, Natasha. You
just said what I was going to say. You see all this money going up from all these smaller entities, and the bulk of it seems to stay up there and kind of trickle back down. And so people are saying or asking, is too much going up? Can we restructure it in such a way that more of it stays towards the bottom where most consider real ministry happening?
And Emmanuel,
and a follow-up question that I'd like to add to the end of what Latasha said is, why does it appear that way? Why
because
does it
we
appear
don't know.
that way?
Yeah. I think if I would say, I wouldn't say it is top heavy. I would rather say it is bottom heavy. Okay. It's not top heavy, it's bottom heavy. Okay. Because the reason is very simple. I think 2 weeks ago, I showed you about how the church is the tithe is distributed. What stays at the conference, what stays at the union, and all of that. And about 24% of the tithes leaves the conference office and goes to the union, the division, and the general conference.
Mm-hmm.
And the 24% that leaves the conference level, because at the church, we believe that the conference, if you want to put it as a level, which I don't believe there's levels, but let's say it is levels. The conference, to me, is where the ministry happens the most. Because the conferences have the churches, they have the schools, they have all of that. And with that, once the money goes up, the majority of the 24% that I talked about, the majority of that goes back down to the conference level. So to me, I would rather say that it is bottom heavy because 24% leaves, but a big amount of the 24% also goes back down, which we'll talk about that later.
Sure. Before, and let me just explain why we would call it, or why I called it top heavy, is because it's in the eyes of the beholder, right?
Correct.
So, so when you see Sister Johnson, that's on the pew level, which I like. I want you to know I agree with you that the triangle actually turns the other way. The power is in the pew. We just don't teach that, right? But for that person that sits there and says, okay, all this tithe goes up to the conference. I'm talking about church to conference right now. We're not even on the union level. We're not even on the division level. We're not even on the GC level.
Okay.
From the church level, from the pews level, and by the way, I do agree with you, but I want you to see what they see. From that level, where their boiler is has gone out over the winter. I'm being realistic. Where their pews are, the cushions are worn down after the years, et cetera, et cetera. They'll say to themselves, why do we send all that money up? I'm not even at the union yet. Let's stay right where we are with pews and local conference and say, and that's why we say it's top heavy, because the average person who starts to think about it, are we there, gang? So that was starts to think about it, would say, hold on, it is top heavy. And I do understand where you come from as far as that's concerned. So anybody else want to help me with that, or we're going to talk about how, because I do want to talk about how it comes back down right after that. So top heavy, Nick, top heavy, Chuck.
I was going to say, I think that's the perfect place where it does seem top heavy, because at the conference level, of course, as Emmanuel just said, the larger percentage stays there for the conference to work. But in the church level, the local level, all of the tithe dollars goes away and the offering stays at the church. So particularly for, for instance, I work treasury at my church. So when I'm like preparing a statement or something, I'm saying, wow, all this money is going away and our church needs this. You can't help, your mind can't help but say, wow, wouldn't it be nice if we could keep some of this to deal with the things that are facing our church, instead of having to get a loan from the union or a loan from the, that's the psychology of it. So I think you're saying the right thing. That's what people are thinking, but Emmanuel's helping us understand why why we should shift that.
Let us judiciously use the word helping. What Emmanuel was doing was talking math, and that is how much goes up and how much comes down. That's math.
Yes.
And he was correct. He's correct in what he affirms, but I would challenge his statement based on what it denies. That's good math, but it is not good equity. The money goes up and then it comes down. But when you consider how much is at the base that is coming, that it comes back to, it is still not an equitable distribution. The work that goes on at the congregational level, the way it's collected at the congregational level, the fact that the congregational level is the source, even if you sent 80% of it back down, it still would not be equitable. So while it's good math that says, yes, it's bottom heavy because we're sending a lot back, it is not equitable distribution.
Can I throw something in there real quick, everybody? Policy. Can policy be changed?
Yes. Next question.
You know, I think another thing that the last time, last about 2 weeks ago when we met, we shouldn't forget that Adventist Church, we have the worldview. We do not believe in congregational way of funding. I did an exercise in one of the conferences that there was a particular church that they provide huge amount, and they thought that because they provide, that amount, the conference should be giving this money back, all of that back and forth. And when I sat down with them, with the church, I went to the church and said, okay, this is the tithe that you think you sent to the conference. Let's break it down. Let's look at your pastoral staff. And they were like, well, Emmanuel, okay, let's assume that the salary is this much. And I said, it's not just the salary. There's also medical benefit. There's retirement. There's all of that. By the time you deduct all of those out, the money is gone. The tithe dollar that they think that they send it all to the conference, they didn't, because they use it to support their pastoral staff that are there, that are carrying on the mission. And that's what they have to do. And so once you break all of them down, you realize that there's no money that is left. Even though you may think that you sent a big amount up, but that amount was used to support your local church and also to look at the worldview and support the others that are needing assistance.
You know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing that we need to teach it. And I think, and the reason why I say that is because I believe that even some of our pastors don't know that, right? And I'll tell you why I say that, because we were in constituency one time. And
oh no. Okay, good. I remember this.
Tasha, you remember that? And somebody, if I get it wrong, just correct me. Someone was like, "Pastors, your salary is $100 and something thousand dollars."
Yeah.
And the pastors were like, "I don't make that much." What's that crazy person talking about? When the truth is that when you do add up all of the benefits and the package or whatever the case may be, then you see that it's there. But I think what the biggest problem that we have is communicating.
Correct.
All of these things.
Correct.
Because just like you said, I jumped on Tally's side almost immediately when I said, this brother don't know what you're talking about top heavy over here. But then when you see that what I give at the local level, and I want to make this clear for everyone.
Yes.
I keep forgetting this is a world church.
It's a world church.
I keep forgetting that this is not just the Ghanaian church, or this is not Springfield Church or West Church. I'm sorry, West Church. It's not just West Church, but that the funds, as the funds go up, is being distributed. I want to take you somewhere, Emmanuel, really quick. How does, and I'm not saying it because you're from Africa. If it was anybody else, I would ask this question, or from the continent of Africa. Those who are out in the bushes, no, I'm gonna say it the right way, in the bush, that you have to ride bikes and you have to, etc., to get to some of those places. How does my tithe dollar at the local church affect what happens in the rural part of Africa or Europe? There's all over the place, but I want to stay with Africa right now. Help me.
Yeah. So, one thing that I always, comment North America, the church is growing because of the financial support that the church has from North America, from NAD. When you look at the world church, in Africa, they provide only 2% of their tithe to the General Conference. And that's all that they can afford. North America, we used to provide about 6%. Now we are going down to about 5.5. That is the money that the General Conference use that money to support those places that you're talking about. In Africa, there are so many missionaries that are out there that are providing the mission, the work that God has assigned us. So significant part of the money that is raised at the local church is being used to do the missions abroad. And that is why we need to always look at the worldview when we are looking at tithing.
May I ask a question? I mean, because based upon the equation that you just shared with us, every dollar that I give, approximately 6 or 7 cents of it goes to the quote world church. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So the assertion that tithing is addressing the needs of the world church is basically saying that 7 cents out of every one of my dollars is going internationally. Would I be correct in assuming that?
That'll be correct. This is just the general conference portion.
Right.
This is just general.
So if the philosophy is that we are a world church, yet I'm only going to give 7 cents to the world, it appears that we have either shrunken the world in our estimation, or 93 cents is going somewhere else that ain't the world. And that's the part I'm willing to, you know what, I'll give you 8 cents out of every dollar. Let's talk about the 92 cents that ain't going to the world, Emmanuel. Can we work around that a little bit?
Yeah, we can do that. And remember that.
I'd love to.
Yeah, because the mission is also in North America as well.
Yeah. I don't mind talking about. I mean, but when people say the world church, you immediately conjure up images of people in small villages praying that somebody would stand on the hill so they could say, "Blessed are the feet of those," and we're only talking 7 cents. So let's rule, as they say in law. I stipulate the 7 cents. I raise you one and make it 8. But when it comes down to the other 92 cents, I'd like to see more of that stay at the local church level. Let me just be really plain and straightforward. And the world, I'll give the world a dime. Let's work around that 90 cents and talk about how that can be utilized to foster a greater level of men. I'm getting ready to retire. And one of the reasons I'm getting ready to retire is because I am so burned out, because I don't have an associate pastor, because we can't afford to have an associate pastor. Now, all of my friends in Philly who have churches smaller than mine with less revenue than mine have associate pastors. I don't have one. I burned out. I'm retiring because the tithe distribution does not allow my church to properly staff the ministerial needs that it has to generate the income that the denomination is using to maintain a hierarchical structure that I think does not distribute with equity the income that is taken. All right, speech over, soapbox done. I retire a little bit earlier now.
Is that November or December? So
I think it's October now.
But here's the thing, Nick, you're right. And I think when you split it up in the very beginning, in the beginning of the conversation, we talk about the spiritual side of it, right? And then on the other side of it, we talk about the policy side of it. And I believe that the more communication, and Emmanuel, help me with this, policy can be changed. But I do think that we're afraid that if we touch the sacred cows, that we'll be afraid that it'll be an Ananias and Sapphira type situation, or people would judge us for that. When honestly and truly, Nick, I'm with you. If you flipped it and you said, hey, let's make a policy change that 12%. Hey, I'll go as high as 12. Nick, you were nice on 10, but I'll go as high as 12. I think that the change in policy will be easier once the people understand the actual distribution of the funds. That's what I do. I do think that. Emmanuel, help us with that. Do you think that that moving percentages around will hurt?
You see, the other thing that I want to quickly add is that we shouldn't just forget that it is not only the church, the local church. We also have schools that are also using the tithe dollars.
Good stuff. Good.
And there are teachers that they need to have certification. They need to have continuous education. All of that are part of the tithe dollars for the distribution. And so once you put all of that together, it's very difficult to change the math, because changing it will not work. Because as Nick said, we need to do the mission in Ghana. Recently, in the summer, I went to Ghana.
7 cents.
And we baptized over 50 people. I did evangelism campaign.
Hold on, wait a minute. You said you, hold on, Nick. One second. Nick, did you say you preached?
Yeah.
You can tell he's a preacher.
And even in November, I'm going to Liberia. We are going to evangelism.
Go ahead, keep going, keep coming, keep coming.
And so that is your money. That is your tithe dollar.
All right, all right.
So all of that is being used for the mission, because that's what God has assigned us, Matthew 28. And so anytime you talk about a tithe dollar, don't forget about the schools, that they are also being financed with a tithe dollar.
What else, Emmanuel?
I have.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chuck. Because
I just had a question. It's just question in my mind, and perhaps a question in the minds of those that are listening. How does the policy makers come to the percentages that they come up with as to where the money goes? How do they come up with that? Do they meet somewhere and they have charts or data or
they look at
real need, and then they decide this percentage goes here, this percentage goes there? What is that process?
Correct. Yeah. So, it starts with the North American division for us, for here in NAD. So general conference, once we go to the sessions, so there are policies that are voted and all of that. Then we adapt those policies into our division. And so they come up with a distribution. And the distribution has been there for quite a long time. The only change that is happening is the money that goes to the general conference. That is now being reduced. Recently, there was a discussion about tithe parity. I think probably you heard about tithe parity. That just to say that for the church, for the worldwide divisions, they contribute 2% of their tithe to the general conference. But NAD, we do over 5.85% of tithe. And so the plan was, can we also reduce it so that we can also do more ministry in North America? So that is the only one that is changing. So that is how the process goes.
So when you ask, can we change it? Who's asking that, and to whom are they asking it?
Oh, so if the change should happen, normally it will start from the local conference. So the local conference will take an action, and they say, okay, let's say this should be changed. They send it to the union take action. We send it to NAD sends action, and then goes to the general conference. So that is the bodies that process changes.
And so we can spark a revolution in Allegheny East and bring it to Brother Emmanuel, and then they'll take it to the NAD, and then we'll go to the GC, and then we'll have equity tally, and then we'll have equity.
And so once it goes, I think the basic thing is, how is that change going to further the mission that God has assigned us beyond your local church? How is that going to impact the world field? So they put all of that together, and then they come up with the policy recommendations.
The more I listen to this, everyone looks at the situation from their point of view.
Correct.
As a local church member, I'm looking at it but I would never want to make those percentage. I would never want to have to look at the world view and see everything that needs to be done, because it seems like no matter what the percentages are, there's going to be some entity, some area that feels like they need more, And so I think for me, it's kind of understanding that there's a really big pot. There's an overview that even I don't understand or see. However, I'm trusting that those who are in those positions, who have to look at all of that, have scrutinized the things that are presented to them. But that doesn't mean that we can't, as you said, still challenge those things so that they can look at them again or reevaluate them again. But
hold on, Emmanuel.
So I know I want to add this quickly.
Go ahead. Go.
One of the biggest piece that we use the tithe on is retirement.
Hold on. Go back again. What?
Retirement.
Nick.
Retirement of our ministers, of the church employees. I went to one church. It was complaining that, hey man, why are we sending all of that? And I said, you had a pastor here before. He said, yes. And where is the pastor? The pastor is retired. Do you think as a church we need to take care of the pastor? And he said, yes. I said, so which money should we use to take care of that pastor? So we use that tithe dollars. We spend about 11% of your tithe dollars to fund the retirement of our ministers.
Nick,
Those who have retired.
Like Nick.
like Nick.
No, when he gets there, he's not retired
Can I
yet.
get-
He's part of
In
the
a
list.
few days.
He's going to be part of the list.
Hey, listen, real quick. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marlene, and then we're gonna try to take a
So,
call.
in other words, Brother Emmanuel, if we could just recap, I think it's important for people to understand that it's the sharing of the big pot.
The sharing of the
When we put our monies in, as Pat was saying, as parents, hey, I give my tithing, I trust that they're going to do it appropriately. You guys have this system set up. My monies are not coming back to me the way I think they should, because we are a world church and we're looking out for everyone.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. When COVID started last year, Columbia Union, our union, we gave money, about $1.4 million back to our conferences. Okay. NAD added $600,000. So that is your tithe dollars that you provided some years ago. We never knew that COVID will happen. We never knew that there's going to be an emergency. So they, as a union, NAD, they need to be ready to provide support when an emergency happens. And so that
So
is
also some policy changes may need to occur at the local conference level. If you give back to us, how are we distributing, the monies that return at the local conference?
Yeah.
correct. Yes.
I
So
think we have
that's
a
a way
caller.
we could get more monies back if there was a revisiting
Yeah.
of
And
the
then,
policy.
yeah. So when COVID started, the conferences did extremely well. There were so many of the schools that couldn't even afford because the parents were not able to pay their tuition. So the conferences have to take over the payroll of these schools. And they did that. And again, that is your tithe dollars that the conferences use to do that.
I think there's a caller that's about to jump through the
There is a
phone.
call. I hope it works out. Let me make sure that our caller could hear us. Go ahead, Bill from Ebenezer. You're on the air, Bill. Bill, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah. Hey, Bill, go ahead.
Yes.
You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I am.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay. Hello, my name is Bill, as you've heard. And I appreciate very much this program. The question that I am concerned about is not with tithing. I'm concerned with the distribution of tithe. Now, as I heard earlier, the questions that you mentioned in terms of how tithe is used, we know that the tithe goes for ministry. And has been said earlier, tithe is given mainly for the support of the ministry. That includes the ministers and any other functions that we talk about. Ministry takes place at the church. And I am concerned that there is no direct distribution to the church when it comes to funds from tithe. For example, we pay everyone in the conference office from the tithe.
That's right.
President, secretary, treasurer, administrative assistants, custodians, gardeners, etc. Therefore, there are grounds to say that the tithe can be paid for those functions. But those functions also take place at the church. And that's where ministry is. How come that the church cannot subsidize, at least tithe cannot subsidize the local church for many of the functions that take place? My position is that the tithe, some of the tithe or a portion of the tithe should come back to the local church and be used for the same things based on the same policies that govern the conference and the union and etc. apply to the church, and they just can't use it for anything, but they can use it for what the conference uses it for. Consequently, many of these churches that are suffering for in the area of ministry, for providing secretarial services at their church, for keeping their churches clean. Some churches pay their treasurers. Why can't some of the tithe come back to the local church? 5% of what they give, 8% of what they give, to help pay for some of the ministry at the local church.
Well,
flesh and blood did not reveal that to that man.
hey, and
That's in the chat as well. That same question.
and Nick, I feel so bad calling him Bill because now I know who he is. I don't ever call him
That's
Bill.
all right.
Just know I'm taking full advantage of calling you Bill. I know my father would slap me for that, but that's why. Emmanuel, if you will, you've heard what he said. And we're coming from the local, and we've talked about that from the local side. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts with that? And I know you talked about it before because he was really reiterating what we're seeing from the pews, and so forth. And go ahead, please.
Yeah. I hear his concern and I sympathize with them and understand them. But the reality is this: if you were to have each local church to keep, let's say, 5% of tithe, there will be some churches that will never have pastors. Okay? And the reason is, as we did the math, there are some churches that have full-time pastors, but their tithe doesn't even fund in entirety the pastors' salaries and benefits and their ultimate retirement when they retire.
What you're saying, Emmanuel, is that if we mess around with the numbers, just
correct.
What I mean by that, I'm not talking about mixed numbers. I'm talking about
put it that way.
Numbers, the local church will be hurt.
Yes, most local churches will be hurt. Most local churches. There are some that they could support themselves and all of that. Because yes, go ahead,
Brother Emmanuel. Do you know the dollar amount that it takes to cover a pastor in a church? Because I think, we save the funding, but sometimes people need to hear the dollar amount.
Yeah. So it depends on the geographical area of the conference. So let's use this side. I mean, living in Baltimore, DC area here.
Yeah. Why don't you use that side? Yeah. Go ahead.
To make it easier, to make the math easier. Okay? Yeah. Remember that for the ministers, for the pastors, it's not just their salaries. There are some benefits that include their children's education, their medical, their retirement, taxes, all of those things combined. It would take at least $150,000 for a pastor, at least, at minimum.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
At minimum, it will cost about
fair. Yeah.
So let me be more realistic to it. I had a church that we were doing 80,000 in tithe. Just hear me out, right? I had two churches. One was doing 80. One was doing literally close to 200 something thousand.
Yes.
When they moved me to the church by itself,
correct,
where there was the 70,000, 80,000, or whichever, what you're saying then is that church could not afford me being there if there were not other churches weren't in the sharing part of it, then I couldn't get paid.
Absolutely. Yes. And then ultimately, the church should also keep money there for the retirement of the pastor. When the pastor retires, the church has to continue to pay the pastor retirement benefits. So when you put all of that together, it's huge. It gets close to about $200,000. And some of the churches cannot. There was a particular church, for instance, that the church was paying the tithe was about $250,000. And they were complaining that, they sent all of that to the conference and blah, 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 all of those issues. And unfortunately, the pastor's wife had cancer. Okay. And so I went to the church and I said, how do you want us to treat your pastor and the spouse? And they said, Emmanuel, the conference needs to take care of the pastor's wife, pay all the bills, blah, blah, blah. And I said, pay the bills with which money?
Tithe.
Okay. Yeah. So once we put all of that together, we realize that the math becomes very difficult to deal with.
For the changes. Hey, can we just hold for a second here? We just have a caller that I want to bring up real quick. This caller is coming from Liberty Church. Shelton, you're on the air. Can you hear us? You're on the air. Shelton, go ahead. You're on the air. He's listening. So. Oh, here you go. Here you go. Don't listen to the background, Shelton. Don't listen to the background. Listen to us, okay? We're right where we are. Go ahead. You're on the air, Shelton. Go.
Can a treasurer or okay.
Yeah, don't listen to that. Just listen to us over here. Go ahead.
Or financial chairman or stewardship secretary. How can we
Shelton, are you? We can't hear you.
You need to speak directly into your phone and not listen to the playback.
And stop romancing the playback there.
Can you hear me?
No, come to the phone. Come to the phone. There we go.
I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Ask your question now. Go ahead. We're ready.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
How does a treasurer? I'm in the phone. How can a treasurer, financial chairman, stewardship director get a breakdown of the dollars that we sent to the conference? And I understand that most of the dollars that come from our local church stays in our local conference. So how can we get a benefit from the tithe that stays in the local conference to advance our operation outreach in our local churches?
Okay.
But, guys, you see where we are, right? I mean, you see where we are. We're still looking at, and Shelton, still a great question. I mean, you hear what's going on. We're getting the listeners who are sitting in the pews saying, how can we? Now, let me just answer one question for you, Emmanuel, before I throw it to you, and any one of you can help me with this. Anytime our treasurer, and our treasurer is Mr. Martin, Elder Martin,
yes.
Anytime he gives us a report, directors, and he gives pastors a report, those reports are not secret. They're not secretive reports.
Right.
When the pastor has those reports from the conference office, it should go down another level or go up another level to the pews. So the information that we get of what your church is doing and what the conference is doing, and they give it to us every quarter. I'm talking to Shelton now. Your pastor should either have that in the bulletin or should be able to let the pews know what the conference is doing. Anybody agree, disagree with me on that? I mean, you can
I do, Pat, but also I think the caller is stating more of an itemized kind of chart to see where all the percentages are going. Now, from my report, I'm not sure if I get anything that's like that, the various uses of each dollar, because if we're, seeing 24 cents away on the dollar, the caller saying out of 76, is there anything we can get back, of the 76%, how much, pays for the pastor? And well, you just said education and all those other things too. Is there anything that can come back? And so with that, can we see an itemization of where it goes?
And it's a good question, Emmanuel. I mean, I know you're on level in the union level, and you're not definitely going to speak for our treasurer.
I'll try.
Go ahead and try.
Yeah. So, I would tell you that Mr. Lawrence Martin, the CFO, the treasurer there, will be happy to give each and every person a breakdown, because the breakdown is not secret. It is there. Because as a church or as a conference, they use that money appropriately. Most conferences will have about 60% of the tithe to finance the conference operations. When I say the conference operations, I'm not just talking about the people that work at the conference office. I'm talking about all the ministry that happens at the local conference. So if 60% goes there, 11% will go to your retirement. So now the money is almost gone. And then, as I told you, they have schools that they need to take care of and all of that. So that is how the breakdown is. But the conference will be happy to provide that information anytime. It's no secret.
So you're, I know, I love that word. No secret, no secret.
No.
So Emmanuel, what you're saying is that Mr. Martin, hold on, let me call him right now while we're talking.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin should be able to let everybody know. If we ask for it,
Correct.
I'm
Absolutely.
sure it could be done that way. And I don't even want to joke about it that way, because remember, the truth is that we still recognize this thing. Remember, we're looking at it on the other side. We're not looking at it on the relationship with Jesus, the your tithing out of worship. Remember, we're not looking at it at that. What we're looking at it now is policy side of it. Am I right, Nick? Did I say it right, Nick? As far as
you said it right. You got it. Yeah.
Okay. As far as the policy. So we're not even, and I want our listeners to know, we're not coming down on Emmanuel either. We're opening it up for people who have these type of questions and would like to hear them answer. Tasha, I want to come to you real quick. Do we have any that's in the chat you want to bring up?
Yeah, we have several that have come through the chat. Some of them we may have touched on, but just for the sake of not missing, Norma Russell had a question about how do we justify closing churches in this country? And she's gave an example, I guess, of a church in West Virginia. I don't know if that's something, Emmanuel, you want to speak to, but
yeah, I know we shouldn't close a church. Okay, that's what I'm saying, that if each church is to keep its money or a percentage of its money, some churches will be closed permanently, because there will be no personnel, there will be no pastors that could be assigned to those churches because they cannot afford. Okay. So that is why, as Adventists, we have designated the conference as a storehouse, which sometimes when I say storehouse, some people don't want to hear that.
Well, he's smiling hard.
Isn't that true?
Storehouse. He's got this big smile on his face, like storehouse. Yeah.
And so that is why, because as you know, that person said, there may be a church in West Virginia, there may be a church in Pennsylvania that is still having a full-time pastor that they cannot afford. And so we don't want. And beside the pastor, the conference sends money for evangelism program. And the church may have a school that normally we don't talk about them, but the conferences also subsidize the educational expenses of that particular school. So all of that come from the tithe dollars at the local conference.
Okay, and that leads to another, I'm thinking this is a question, because this comes up a lot too about tuition. You know, a lot of people feel like, why don't we contribute more to the tuition for our children to attend these schools? But I hear you saying that the way the tithe dollars are used is to actually fund the teachers and to be able to keep up the day-to-day expenses of the school. Is that what you're saying? Okay. All right, we have a few more, and I know
Tasha, hold on for a second. You know that this is a burden for me. You can't just pass by school tuition like that when it's a burden for me. So Nick, not Nick, I'm sorry, Emmanuel, I'm going to say it out loud. You don't even have to answer it.
No, I will try.
No, I don't want you to. I don't want you to get anything. I always believe that teachers should be paid the same way pastors are paid from the tithe, not tuition based. Okay, we can go on to the next question.
I'm sorry, I just want to see.
He saw the deer. Deer in the headlight.
Okay. Another question, I think, because I think this we may have alluded to this, and Claudette wanted a little clarification. Is the financial attention given from the conference to any particular church based on the amount of tithe that church gives?
No, I think that's the beauty. That's the beauty of Adventist church. Okay. We don't give a priority to a particular church because of their financial status. And that's how it's supposed to be. You need to
fix your face, Nick.
You need to, you know, I see Nick. I see Nick is ready to fight.
Emmanuel.
Are you talking about hiring another pastor, Tally?
Are you talking about ideally, or I mean, that's
I'm
ideal.
talking about, that's how it's supposed to be.
Okay, I accept that. That's how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be 6'2" and 190 pounds, but
I know.
We're gonna go on.
Yeah, okay. I know, Nick. You could do it. I'm telling you, Nick, you could do it.
I know. because as a church, you know, I see my local small church as the same important church as a church with 1,000 members, because every soul that's in the local church is as important as every soul that's in the bigger church.
Yeah.
And so as a conference, we should treat them the same way.
Yeah,
and most conferences are trying to do that.
I mean, which explains why in Washington, D.C., most churches have associate pastors, and in Philadelphia, none do, even though Philadelphia is the largest metropolitan area in the union. But yeah, I mean, there's equity there.
But that still
Let
goes
me
to
take my tongue out of my cheek firmly at this point.
Yeah.
the two, does one negate the other? I mean, in terms of attention, when she says attention, I don't know what she really means by attention, because I think I'm hearing Tally interpreting that as we need another pastor, and because our tithe dollars don't fit the equation or the numbers that justify getting another one, I may not get it. So I mean, is there, how do we reconcile those two things? Not having enough money in tithe dollars at your local church to fund two pastors versus not being given special attention.
We have enough at West Philadelphia to fund two pastors. Let's be clear about that. It is a matter of perceived priority, and although I respectfully accept what Emmanuel says, that ideally we do try to, we want to be fair, but the truth of the matter is everybody knows this, that churches that have larger tithe get greater attention. And even though we want to be fair, it is not necessarily the way it works in reality. That's just the fact.
Nick, let me just bring us around here as we coming closer down to a close. Tasha, if you look at real quick, Tasha, if you look at Lawrence Men's, a good friend of mine out in Virginia. So why aren't smaller churches that aren't doing as well sent big time pastors help build? I had to say that, right?
Because Pat doesn't want to go.
No, I was going to say Nick, I was going to say it's you that don't want to go. But listen, GP is the youngest out of all of us, and we could push him around. He's not ordained.
He is ordained. Aren't you ordained?
Not yet.
So we could take him as the big time pastor and move him there. But the reason why I brought out Lawrence, Tasha, and you can go ahead with the other questions on there. The reason why I did that is because, remember, it's the perception. Yes. Of those who are sitting in the pews that say, "Oh, I guess we're small, so we won't get a Richard Martin." You understand what I'm saying? And the reason why I call his name, because I have much respect for his style, his ability, etc. But then I do want to turn to say, look where he is.
He is at a smaller church.
That's it, right? So remember, it's because everybody won't see that or look at who's big time. I mean, and again, it's in the eyes of the beholder, who you consider as big time and who you consider as
mercy. That's a whole nother show, right?
That is another show. Who's big time? I think GP did bring that up. That is one of the things that we wanted to talk about. But go ahead. If you have other ones that's coming up, Latasha, let's go ahead and handle that.
There was another question too. I'm trying to get a variety here. This had more to do with the structure from Beverly Gordon. In addition to considering changes in the math, would it make sense to reconsider the whole
hierarchical structure?
I know, right? I was getting structure of the church as a possible solution.
I think this particular thing, the structure is beyond this discussion,
right?
Because it has to go through all the way. I'm not saying that we cannot talk about it here. But I'm saying that to make any significant change.
One second, Beverly, give Nick a call. I'm gonna give you his number in the back room, Beverly. You can give Nick a call. He'll answer that.
That's my first elder's wife. She has my number. Yeah. And let me tell you, flesh and blood did not reveal that to her. I mean, that is a great question. I love you. I love you, Dr. Gordon.
And and help me out really quick, everybody. When she says, we don't have to go deep into it. When she says
hierarchical,
I see, right? That word.
Just say hierarchy. Hierarchy structure.
In your eyes, everybody, where's she coming from?
She's talking about the fact that the church is stratified with 5 different hierarchical levels and allows funding to go up through those levels. And of course, once that funding goes up, it defies gravity by never coming back down, except for the amounts that Emmanuel has spoken of earlier. And that if we change the way the structure works, we could change the way the distribution works. If I'm hearing Dr. Gordon correctly.
Which is another show, everybody, because as I was growing up in the Adventist church over the past 20 years, I've been longer than 20 years, maybe even 30. There's a question of, should we even have divisions? Should we have unions? Those questions have come up and they're still out there floating around. So even though it's not for this show, First Elder, I just want to know what gifts you guys are giving Nick before you and is that going to come out of tithe? That's all I want to know.
All I know is when you said we shouldn't have unions, I saw hands reaching across from Emmanuel Square into yours, close to your neck.
Do you have any more for us?
Yeah, there was I guess because I didn't know this either. Don't you know? Is clarifying, as we heard this said that the church where the pastor is located, when that pastor retires, the church is responsible for paying that pastor's retirement. Is that what you said?
Yeah, so the whole Adventist church is responsible for paying that pastor's retirement.
Not the local church, the denomination.
Not the local church, the whole system.
The big pot.
The big pot is responsible. So in other words, that church is also part of the big pot that is helping to pay for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, don't you know, who's been following us for a while? Thanks. Is I know that when Emmanuel says it, we're having there's a little bit of a challenge when we're saying the church pays for it. We know that they do pay for it, but it goes up to in some cases, those depending on where we're listening from or regional conference, etc. We know that those funds help with that as far as. So I just wanted to make that clear for don't you know. But can we just bring this back because I just want us to just get our trade tables up a little bit. Can we just put our trade? Am I saying it right?
Yeah, because we haven't talked about those blessings yet. We were supposed to spend some time on the blessings.
I know. It depends what the producer tells us. If the producer says
we had to take time for that.
Go ahead, Emmanuel. I'm sorry, you were talking there.
Nick is very calm today. I'm very surprised to see him that calm.
Emmanuel was ready.
You didn't see his shirt. He said it's Ghanaian, but to me it looked like one of those Miami Vice shirts from back in the day. Chuck calm too. He quiet. Chuck quiet today.
No, I have more questions and discussion than we have time.
Yeah.
And that might be providential.
Amen.
It might be part 3-ish or something. We don't know. It might be something that they all want to hear about. But I can tell you this. I don't want us to end without knowing that even though Tally, thanks, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, thanks for taking us over to the policy side. We know we wanted to touch that, and we still haven't unpacked everything that Emmanuel could flow out to all of us and those who want to ask more questions about it. But I want to make sure that in one of our takeaways to this evening is that we deal with that it's still a part of your personal relationship. It's still a spiritual, it's still of spiritual essence for us. I don't even want it to call it a command of God. I just don't like that more than we understand that it's God setting us up for a blessing.
Correct.
And that's how I really want us to look at it from that standpoint. If you will, Emmanuel, I know all of us here have seen what God has done for us. Are there any levels or anything that you have seen that our tithe has done for you personally, spiritually, even where you sit?
Absolutely. That's why I said, back in summer, I was in Ghana doing evangelism. And without tithe dollars from North America, it won't be possible. Never. It will never be possible. And spiritually, for myself, I don't see tithe as a command. I see it just as a privilege.
Right.
It is just a privilege. Right. Because God can fund his work without any assistance, any single dollar from anybody. He can do that all by himself. Mm-hmm. But he just wants a partnership with us. He just wants us to be part of his mission. And so if you see it like that, sometimes the policy may not make sense, the distribution may not make sense, all of that. But in all of that, God has a way to work through that to fulfill his purpose. So I think that's what I would say.
I want to add to that too. I remember one of the most impactful, I think it was a Sabbath school or Wednesday night prayer meetings I've ever attended, was at the Pine Forge Church, and Rob Patterson was leading out, and he turned the whole service into giving people the opportunity to share their tithe testimonies, meaning, how has tithing impacted you personally? And to listen to, and it was a small church, but to listen to 10 people share how this is what I did. I trusted God with this, and this is how he blessed me. And a lot of times it wasn't even financial. It was about their faith walk and their faith journey. For me, that was transformational. And I think, we talk about the transparency that we want to hear from a conference level, but also personally, when we have our own tithing journeys and we have our own testimonies about how tithing has helped us spiritually, it's important for us to share, for others to refocus maybe the way they're thinking about tithing and look at it as more of a personal relationship and an opportunity to deepen your connection to God. So I think it's important that we share with each other how tithing has enriched our lives instead of seeing it as a burden. I almost see it almost like a membership fee. Some of us treat tithing like, gotta pay this 10%. When it really is really not even about that. It's about, look what God can do when you do this thing, when you turn this over to him. Look what he can do. I think we need to do more of that as well.
All right.
And I know that you're getting ready to preach, but go ahead.
I would add that look at what God does even when you don't do it. I mean, he lets his rain fall on the just and the unjust. I resonate with what Emmanuel says about the privilege of being a partner with God. And I really do believe that it is a faith expression. It deepens the faith, and by faith, not I believe that God is going to bless me, but faith saying I recognize that I am a steward of God. I'm in partnership and I am his responsibility. But that is not the question. I mean, the issue. I think Marlena just got translated. Her tithe must have been bigger than ours. But the issue isn't whether or not tithe is an expression of faith or whether or not God will bless you, because God blesses us even when we aren't faithful. The issue is, what is the practice and the policy that will govern the distribution of the resources over which we have been entrusted? And that is a very practical discussion. It is a very real discussion. And it is clear that the majority of the members perceive that we need to have some real changes made structurally when it comes to distribution. To Emmanuel's earlier point, one of the problems we have is a lack of equity, not only in distribution of funding, but a lack of equity in how we support ministers. For example, if a church only has $150,000, then they should have a pastor who fits their structure. And we have a structure that says every pastor gets paid the same because we have this egalitarian belief that everybody is, quote, equal, when the truth of the matter is that a younger pastor who may just be coming in may be able to work at a lower or a lesser level than a pastor who's been around for 30 years. And we need to have a graduated structure that will allow for a smaller church to have a pastor who might be part-time or who may not be at the maximum level. I mean, we have to expand our view of how we use our resources.
Yeah, they do that sometimes. Usually when they hire a fresh graduate pastor, they don't start them at the highest level of salary. They put them lower, and then they climb the ladder that way.
Yeah, it's still on a formula though. Yeah,
it's still a formula. Yeah. But as a church, we don't. I would tell you, every single person that works for the church is underpaid. Okay, every single person who works for the church is underpaid. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're all
sitting here like
Emmanuel Asiedu for president.
Yeah. Because the tithe, even though at the time I said $1.2 billion, when you look at all the expenses that the church has, I'm talking about the church, the the division, the conference, all of that, the expenses are even more than the resources that we have.
So to tell you the truth, actually, God is taking care of his churches, because
Absolutely.
no matter what we're putting out there, uh, uh, dollars itself is not taking the church through. It's how God is dealing with it. I mean, honestly and truly, it's not just you tithe, but it's also what you give. I mean, there are people who have decided that they're going to give. It's going to be a part of their will, wills and testament,
Yeah.
etc. So,
Sure.
and I know there's a lot of funding that's going on.
Yeah. Plan giving. Yep.
That's
Trust and plan giving.
Well, I know this, everybody. I wanted to say it this way, that when I look at tithing, I look at it as worship. I look at it as part of my worship. I just can't go to worship begrudgingly. You understand what I'm saying? That's me. I'm saying on a personal level. I've even considered, since we've been talking about this for 2 weeks and have been discussing it in our meetings, not to have the conference take it out my check. That's the way I do it now, because it feels right to be able to say, I'm writing this, or I'm cash apping it, or I'm giving it as a part of my worship. I'm even thinking about changing it that way, because it's more personal for me. I do have difficulty with how it goes up and comes back down. I'm saying that even as an employer of our conference and a lover of our church. But for those of us who have questions on it, hold on. Don't turn around and be like Nick and decide to leave the church in 2 months. And hold on. But Nick, I just was going to get at you. I really want everyone that, even if you have questions, keep asking and keep asking these questions, because we haven't even touched the surface of what it does, what it can do, policy changes, etc. We have not even talked about that. So I just go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If I might just add, and I know we're soon to end, but when you start talking about money, I got you, GP. You start talking about money, it gets pretty kind of testy. People get very concerned. But I just want us to remember that tithing is not to be a burden. God did not create it to be a burden.
Right.
And as Pat said, let's ask the questions, but use the tithing, as God has asked us. I know many give to charitable organizations and all those kinds of things, but kind of use the tithing the way God intended, so that the whole church will be blessed. I just wanted to add that. And as Tosh was speaking before, we didn't even get to really elaborate on the blessings that God will do for you. I remember some people commented last week, they had been tithing and they saw nothing. First of all, when you give your tithing or return it, as we say, you're just giving back to God, not an expectation to receive, though he did say, prove me, And so I just wanted to throw that out as we end, because sometimes people hear different things. Don't let it be a burden. Remember, it's a blessing. Trust him, and you're going to see great things.
Amen.
Losing power.
Amen.
GP,
tag me in real quick. So I've been quiet, but I was thinking about some of the powerful points that were made about we don't give to get, but we give because we are already blessed. And earlier I was thinking about the Adventist history and how we transitioned from systematic benevolence to our tithing structure. And when you look at the history of the Adventist church, whenever there's been a major issue in society, like the Great Panic of 1857 or the Great Depression, the Adventist church made some changes. And I'm wondering, coming out of this pandemic, will we miss another opportunity to make some changes moving forward, to have more equity and to do more ministry? So that's just where I'm leaving it. Let's not miss our opportunity to make the change that we see that needs to happen, but still trust God and to recognize our blessings. But I don't want us to miss another opportunity as a church on the shifts that we need to make.
GP, if you will, and I know we're live, if you will, I think that is something that we need to talk about, what the church is going to look like after this pandemic has come through. And I just think it's great question and great point, Reverend GP. What they really meant was PG. They didn't mean GP, they meant PG, Pat Graham. But yes, it's awesome. because there needs to be some type of change that comes through as far as time is concerned. I do believe that. Oh, Emmanuel, thanks for hanging with us. Really, really appreciate it. I don't think Nick beat you up too bad.
No, I was expecting a fight, but I didn't get a fight.
Next time come in a t-shirt, then there'll be a fight. And we didn't even let the bulldog out of the cage. Chuck, right there with
I heard him tuning up there a couple times. You know. Hey, I just wanted to send a real quick shout out to Elder Sharon Pettaway, who put some really, really viable points up there. Elder, it's good to see. It's good to see and hear you, even if it's only cybernetically.
I'm going to get a dictionary. Hey, I want to throw this back over to our producer, Latasha Hewitt. You can take it from here.
He's just going to throw it back over to me. Huh? No, once again, everyone, this has been a great discussion. As many of you have said, we're all learning a lot. We're all processing a lot. I think we're at that point where, we have that faith side. We understand that we're going to give because that's what God has asked, and there's a blessing in it. And then there's the other side where even as we're giving, it's okay to challenge things and ask questions. And that's what the UpSet is about. We're here to have these types of discussions openly and honestly, and challenge us to greater things, setting you up for something greater. That's what the UpSet podcast is all about. And Emmanuel, thank you so much for joining us, not just 1 week, but 2 weeks.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel.
And another one. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate having me here.
Awesome.
Yes. And thank you to all of you in the chat. I know we weren't able to get to all of your comments, but we do read them. And a lot of them, are the things that fuel future podcasts. And so we thank you for always being engaged in the chat. We appreciate your commentary. And of course, we always say, if you want to just email us privately, if you want to put something in the chat, we do have an email address where we'll see your comment. Send it to upset@aecsda.com. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to our podcast, the UpSet podcast. We would love to your support, continued support. And of course, we have a couple more weeks left in October. There's enough, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
That's true.
And we have done a podcast on the topic, but I think it's time for us to in October tackle that as well. So guys, let us know in the chat some of the topics you want to see us cover in the next few weeks. And we have some other things brewing as well. So we always love your suggestions. So continue to share them with us. Okay. All right. It's been a great show, guys. Once again, thank you. And everybody, we'll see you next week. We're out.
Amen. Take care, family.
Take care,
see you next week.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
God bless Columbia Union.
That's
Thank
right.
you, sir. I appreciate it.
And Allegheny East.